Hey everyone, today we're talking about why Adam and Eve are naked, which is why I'm just wearing a tank top today. And Yahweh God commanded the human, "You may freely eat of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day you eat of it, you shall die." And the human and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So sometimes we wonder, should we want to go back to the Edenic garden state? You know, it's a return to paradise, right? The free food, no clothes required. Well, what does this nakedness symbolize? For one thing, it can be like the intimacy between a man and wife, but I think there's more going on here to the actual story. For one thing, think about who typically has no shame about being naked. Well, little kids, right? This is something we've had to teach my children a lot. If there's people over, put some pants on, please. And, shame is unhealthy. We don't want to do that. But, there's some things that are private. And so I think what this shows us is that Adam and Eve here are immature. They're somewhat childish, or they're naive. And so that's not a state that we really should desire. There's actually some clever wordplay going on again as you go into the next chapter and we meet the serpent. He's described as clever, and the Hebrew word for that is arum. Right after it describes them as naked, and the word is arumim, right? So it's saying that the snake has street smarts, so to speak, and they don't. Now, the biblical hope is not to be naive, it's to grow in maturity and to grow in knowledge. But does that happen instantly? Should it? That kind of gets to why we often wonder, why are they not allowed to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Right? What does that represent? I think we have to see this is not just some arbitrary command, as if God is saying, I'm going to test them, I'm going to put this one thing here that they can't have and see what happens. Because again, what happens if you tell a kid now, don't eat this pie? That's all they're going to want to do. It's kind of true for adults even. Knowledge is good, obviously. We see that continually through Scripture. The desire for wisdom is something we should seek, but do you want to know evil? I don't know if we should. Now, this grouping of good and evil like this, when you look throughout the Hebrew Bible, very often it's talking about discernment, right? It's knowing right and wrong and choosing to do what's good. And so if we're seeing Adam and Eve as immature and childish, well, how well can immature people define what's good and what's evil, what's right and wrong? Maybe God was preparing them to eat from this tree eventually, but they weren't ready for it yet. And so the question going into chapter 3 we'll look at for the rest of the week is humanity going to trust God to define good and evil? Or are they going to try and claim that knowledge on their own too quickly? At its core, the question is, can we trust God? Well, how would you answer today?